today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about why taking the time to consciously engage in disagreements is vital for your marriage and your family. The truth is, disconnection without, I'm going to call it disagreement or even conflict, leads to emotional flatness and a slow drift. And it's like drinking a soda that's been out for a week. It's flat, it's warm, and it doesn't taste good anymore. That's what your marriage becomes. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we are talking about why retreats save marriages/partnerships before they break. And I want to be really clear. When I say retreat, I don't mean a vacation. Though a vacation could be a retreat if you handled it right, but let's be honest. When we go on vacation, we mostly go on vacation to let our hair down and relax. A retreat, on the other hand, is a conscious stepping back from your life, not just your work, not just your family, your life together, so that you can reassess, recompose, reformulate, and recommit to working together. It's about how intentional pauses and reflection can help you recalibrate and prevent slow relational decay. A listener writes, "We've done a lot of work on our relationship. We communicate better, we have structure, and things are mostly good. But lately, it feels like we're just going through the motions. We're busy, we're productive, but not really connected. Nothing is wrong, but something feels off. Is this just what long-term relationships become?" This is a great question. You know, we talk in this podcast sometimes about the upsurge of what's called gray divorce. Gray divorce is basically people in their 50s and 60s and 70s whose kids have grown up and they've lost their shared purpose, which was raising the children, and they don't have another reason to stay together. And so it could be what long-term relationships become, but it shouldn't be. This is not what I signed up for. I don't know about y'all, but I did not sign up to have a relationship that was parallel, where we're doing our separate interests, where things feel off, but nothing is really wrong. That is not what I signed up for. And I don't think you did either, or you wouldn't be listening. The truth is, disconnection without, I'm going to call it disagreement or even conflict, leads to emotional flatness and a slow drift. And it's like drinking a soda that's been out for a week. It's flat, it's warm, and it doesn't taste good anymore. That's what your marriage becomes. Everything good on this earth came out of disagreement, or really things that stand out. You know, when you design a landscape and you do a whole field of red tulips, you're supposed to drop one yellow tulip in there to make the whole thing stand out. Otherwise, you don't see it. Or when you make music, there's supposed to be a tension between the quiet and the loud, the hard and the soft, the fast and the slow. It's the differences that make everything shine. And so the question is your difference one yellow tulip, or is it that you're just destroying the whole tulip field? And there is a difference here. Our hope when we meet someone that we fall in love with, our hope is that this is someone who's going to help us be the best person we possibly could. Our hope is that they're going to support us through the tough times and the good times, and our commitment is to do the same. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The purpose of marriage, the relationship that we call marriage, is to support one another in being our best possible selves, our highest, most effective self. And when relationships get flat, that stops happening. Because to be our best selves, we have to look at what's not in sync. To get in sync, we have to look at what doesn't feel right. When we're going to a place, if you're traveling to a place, if you're traveling from the living room to the bathroom, you have in your mind, I'm going to go to the bathroom. But unless you say, what do I need to do? Oh my God, I haven't even stood up. There's a conflict that happens there. I'm happy in my cushioned seat. I feel comfortable. I really don't want to get up, boy, but I really need to go to the bathroom. And so you stand up, and then you start walking, and maybe you get a little distracted. Maybe somebody's watching a football game or a soap opera, and you go, oh, that looks interesting. and you get distracted and you totally forget to go to the bathroom. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot to go to the bathroom. Well, that tension between the desire to go to the bathroom and all the other things is what makes us move forward, what makes us continue. It's that tension that makes us aware of what's in the way of me going where I want in my life, in my marriage, in my family, in my work. It's that tension that makes it happen. Without tension, nothing happens. So let me tell you a little story about Brad and Gwen. Brad and Gwen, they done the work. If you were listening to the previous episodes, they had some governance, some guidelines for their relationship. They had their family business separated from their family. They had a family charter. Their conflict was mad reduced. Things were crack-a-lackin'. From the outside, they looked solid, but internally, something was missing because their conversations were logistical. They were efficient, but they were surface level. The emotional energy that once fueled the relationship, you know what I'm talking about? The love, the passion, had somehow fallen aside. Gwen said, "We are functioning, Brad, but I do not feel close to you." And Brad said, "I thought this is what we were working toward, less conflict," right? They were like avoiding conflict, where they weren't kicking ass and they weren't taking names, right? Isn't that the dream? But they weren't airing out their differences. They were functioning well at work. The kids were getting to school. The food was on the table, but they weren't evolving the relationship and the marriage. The relationship can't grow without differences. And they were both changing, you see. So the truth is the relationship was changing, but it wasn't growing. If I change and my wife doesn't, the relationship changes. If we're both changing, the relationship changes. But if we're not working on the relationship while we're changing, the relationship is stagnating. And that's what happened to Brad and Gwen. They just drifted. Their systems were working, but no one was stepping outside to ask, wow, I've changed. Is this still what I want? How has what I want changed? Now that I've evolved and grown, now that I know a little more about life, how has my desire evolved with me? And the breakthrough was, we did a retreat with them. We went off to a secluded place and they shut their phones off. Their kids were being taken care of by one of their parents. And we spent a weekend resting. We spent a weekend relaxing, but we also spent a weekend stepping out of the system to reflect on the system, to reflect on what's missing. And Gwen said, you know what, Brad? I love that our business is growing so fast and that everything's going so well, but I miss when we really had to pull together and work hard together. I miss the way that we were a team. I feel like we're working almost separately now. I miss when we're intimate together, really feeling intimate. See, Gwen felt like they were kind of going through the motions. You know what, now that you mention it, I didn't really realize that that's what was missing. And I do kind of feel like we're not on the same page and we need to be on the same page. We had them do an exercise where they both wrote out, re-explored what their vision for the family was, and we had them compare them and see where the differences were. And out of those differences, they actually came up with something better than either of them had individually. We had them talk through some of their emotions, some of the things that they maybe had been a little frustrated about or a little upset about, that they didn't know how to articulate, but they needed a safe space to do it. And they got on the same page emotionally. They got on the same page in terms of their vision for their family, and they continued to function well strategically and tactically in their marriage and in their work. Now, they realized that they need to step out of their work and their marriage regularly. Right? I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you work in the business, but not on the business, you can never grow it. You're always in the weeds. And the same is true for your relationship. If you're always functioning in the relationship without looking at the relationship itself, you're always in the weeds. You can't develop your vision and growth for that relationship. So they started taking little micro retreats. Once a season, they would take a weekend together, kind of a vacation retreat. They might go to a local beach, go to Florida to the beach or something like that, and spend some time relaxing and spend some time refocusing. You see, a retreat doesn't always have to be all work and no play. Just like a vacation doesn't always have to be all play and no work. And in those micro retreats, they would talk about how are they feeling? What's working? What's not working? What have we been saying? What are we not saying that we need to say? And they took that time without the kids, unplugged from the business. They would do that every season. On a weekly basis, they would just track, hey, how are you feeling today about us? And you know what? The outcome was, and this was unplanned, that sometimes Gwen would just sit down next to Brad, put her head on his shoulder, and he would stop what he was doing, put his arm around her. Or sometimes Brad would just walk up to Gwen and just give her a hug for no reason. The whole dynamic of their relationship changed. Once they got off of human doing and became human beings again and got more in touch with their emotions, they started to connect more. Working together, whether you're in a business or just working on your family together, being married, growing individually and growing together, this is like stepping out onto a bridge. And you want to make sure that you're together and that you're safe as you can be in this world. Many couples believe if nothing's wrong, we're fine. Nothing being wrong, meaning the bills are paid and everyone's doing pretty well, okay, standard life problems. But the truth is that relationships may not break without disagreement or conflict, but they will rot. And that's what Brad and Gwen experienced. Their relationship had been rotting. It had been rotting from being on autopilot. It had been rotting from not consciously looking at their emotions and their interactions and how they talked to each other and how they behaved. It was rotting from unexamined drift. They were kind of drifting with the culture and not rowing against it. Without an intentional pause, a structure becomes a routine, and routines become disconnection, and disconnection becomes distance. Now, don't get me wrong. We all need regularity. But when regularity takes the place of change and growth, that's when we're in trouble. The purpose of regularity, the purpose of physical discipline, spiritual discipline, life practices, habits, if you will, family traditions, governance, procedures, the purpose of all of this regular stuff in life, regular holidays, the purpose of all this is to give us rhythm and consistency, which our mind and body desperately needs, so that when we want change, we can have it directly and in a way that's undistracted. So that when we decide to get up from the living room, go to the bathroom, instead of getting distracted and then going, oh my God, I really need to go, we get to the bathroom and then we consciously decide to stop and watch the ball game with Bart or whatever, or the soap opera. We make conscious decisions. And that's what Brad and Gwen leaned into when they took this first retreat and then started scheduling regular retreats for themselves. Being conscious in their decisions of when to be apart and when to be together, when to avoid conflict, when to engage in conflict. So I want you to ask yourself, right? If you're listening to this, it's no accident. You're here listening to this because you need to ask yourself this question. Am I aligned with my partner? Do I feel really connected, really close and connected? Like if something were wrong, would I know it or would I have to dig? You know, when you're really connected, your partner walks in the room and you can feel when it's off. When you're disconnected from yourself and or from them, that feeling is somewhere else. Ask yourself, are we growing? Where are we going? How are we growing? Retreat time. Time away from our individual lives, time away from our married life, time away from our work, sometimes time away from our families is vital, right? I want to encourage you to go on personal, individual retreats as well. Guided retreats can be incredibly helpful. Most businesses will not do a business retreat without a facilitator because the business dynamics are so complex. So this is kind of a case of kids, don't do this at home without a facilitator. Do it with somebody who's been there, who knows it, who's done it with other people, who can keep it safe for you, particularly if you're feeling very disconnected and very confused. But even if you're not, allowing a third party to facilitate the retreat builds trust and safety in many ways. They bring processes to the retreat that you cannot bring yourself. Now that I'm saying this, I will be writing a book on self-guided family retreats. So look out for that. In the next year, that book will come out. We want to encourage a balance between structure and spontaneity. We want to have reflection, vision, and enjoyment in our retreats, but we also want to have space for stuff to come out that's been kind of tabbed down. It's not just for working on the relationship, it's for working on all aspects of our life. We want to revisit our charter. If you haven't written a charter, maybe you want to go on a retreat to write a charter. Maybe you want to work on a mission for your business and a charter for your family. Hey, if you're not sure what these are, go back to episode 28. I'm not sure if they're numbered, but there's one of the previous episodes that we just did is on the family charter and the business mission, and you want to go back and look at that. You want to use retreats to realign your values, maybe adjust your business direction, realign your marriage. You want to use it for any area that's fuzzy that needs clarity. Strong relationships, partnerships of any kind, they don't just need structure, they need renewal. And renewal is an emotional process. Without taking time away, there's system drift. Connection starts to dissipate. We start to lose our sense of purpose, right? If you're feeling unfulfilled, the chances are you're losing your sense of purpose. But when we take time to step back and look, our alignment can return. Our safety, trust, vulnerability, and intimacy can grow. Our direction, individually and as a family, sharpens. And in our business, don't wait for your relationship to break, all right? You could go on a retreat just because everything's upside down, or you could preemptively go on a retreat so that they don't become upside down. Think about it. Would you rather get your car serviced so it doesn't break down, or would you rather wait for it to break down so you really have to service it? It's a lot more expensive that way and a lot more disturbing. You know, even with strong structure, intentional renewal through retreats, there's one more piece most couples miss, and that's they try to do all of this alone. Somebody once told me human beings are, emotionally, we're like this. We're inside of a box and the instructions on how to get out of the box are on the outside. The only way we can get out is if someone comes and reads them to us. That's why the next episode is about advisors, not allies, because partnership doesn't mean isolation. And an outside perspective, the right outside perspective can change everything. You know, if you're looking for more information on retreats, I'm going to encourage you to email me, rich@richinrelationship.com, or go to our website, richinrelationship.com, and there inside of the free community is a complimentary call with a bunch of tools that you can use. This is not a sales opportunity. We don't sit there and send you endless offers or requests to upgrade. The free community is just that. It is a free community for people to get the tools they need and the resources they need to improve their marriage, because that's what we're about here at Rich in Relationship. In the meantime, I want you to have an amazing day and a fantastic tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you at the next episode of Rich in Relationship.